Good evening, Crime Crunchies. Thank you so much for joining me here tonight. My name is Courtney C. I am your host, a 27-year veteran of the media, and I am so happy that you are here with me this evening and I am able to bring you Crime Crunchies. Alrighty, well, we are going to dive in tonight. I wanted to try something a little bit different. I thought I would just spend an evening with ChatGPT, Chad, my best friend Chad. And I asked Chad yesterday, to give me a prediction of what, based on everything that we've seen on the internet or what ChatGPT has seen on the internet, can you predict what happened to Nancy Guthrie? And so we have those results here tonight. We are going to dive in and see how that's going. So let me share my screen. If you are new, please make sure to subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell. All right, hold on one second. I have a little heater down here on my feet. I know it's summertime, but I like having a fan and a heater sometimes. I need that perfect temperature. Okay, so again, I asked ChatGPT, if you are not a regular watcher, I am very transparent about using ChatGPT. I know it's not 100% accurate, but it does the work for me. It scans everything on the internet. And at this point, we're going off of a ton of speculation, and it's going to give me basically what I would find on the internet if I did it all myself. So again, full transparency. So I asked ChatGPT, I said, based on the internet, what's on the internet right now, could you predict what the main theory behind Nancy's kidnapping could be? The motive, is it financial, emotional, revenge, retaliation, etc.? So let's see what ChatGPT has to say. So Courtney, yes, after going back through the public reporting and especially reweighting the case after the FBI source report that the 3 media ransom notes were fake. Okay, see, I already have a problem because we don't know if they're fake. My opinion has shifted. My prediction, this was primarily an emotionally driven, targeted crime with a financial disguise. Interesting. So if I had to put percentages on the broad motive categories based only on public information available as of July 14th, 2026, I would rank them this way. And I'm going to probably ask it a question here as we get going. So let's just hang in there because I don't think anyone really knows if those ransom notes were fake. Let me ask it so it can think while I'm doing this. So if the ransom notes were real, would your percentages change on what the motive was for kidnapping Nancy Guthrie? All right, let me have it start thinking on that, and let's go back up to the top. We're going to work through this, and we're going to take a look at, I guess, 2 scenarios here. We're going to see what ChatGPT thinks if the notes were fake, and I asked it if it could give us percentages if they were real. All right, so if the ransom notes were fake, ChatGPT says that the estimate of 40% likelihood that this is an emotional grievance, fixation, resentment connected to the Guthrie family or someone in its orbit. 25% linked to a financial crime, but Nancy was a proxy target because of Savannah or perceived family wealth. 20% retaliation, punishment, revenge against a specific person connected to Nancy. 10% personal conflict centered directly on Nancy. 5% random offender, burglary, sexual motive, or other. My strongest overall theory is a hybrid. The offender wanted to hurt, control, punish, or force a reaction from someone connected to Nancy, and money was either a secondary objective or a convenient way to make the crime look like a conventional kidnapping for ransom. And I would have 1,000% agreed with that in the beginning. I felt like financial was secondary to to wanting to hurt Savannah being the target. But I don't know, looking at the latest, potential of maybe being family connected, I do think that financial would definitely be primary right now. Um, and yes, Crime After Dark, I did look at your short, and Dr. Gary Brucato did say that, I mean, this could be absolutely a debt, that they needed the Bitcoin now to cover debt and until an inheritance could occur. So they probably needed, if it's family, speculating, not accusing, but if it's family and they needed the Bitcoin to cover debt for immediate, then they still needed the inheritance for later, depending on what's going on. And again, I do feel like if we look through my scenario of whether the plan that was hatched went off to plan, I do feel like Nancy needed to be eliminated in order to cover the windfall from the ransom. The inheritance needed to happen so that it didn't look so odd when the recipients received money and had money available to them. So, all right. And Courtney, continuing on. And Courtney, I think Savannah is more likely the psychological nexus of the crime than Nancy. I agree with that. That does not mean Savannah caused it, knew the offender, or did anything wrong. I mean, Nancy may have been selected because of what Nancy would do to Savannah and the larger family. Here's why I've landed here. Number one, the FBI's reported conclusion about the notes completely changes my mode of analysis. And see, this is what is upsetting to me, because we don't know that these are fake. And it could be, we've seen reports where there could be different arms. So we've got FBI, out of DC, and we've got FBI in Phoenix, and they could be at odds with each other. Maybe there's one office that says they're fake, and there could be one office that says that they're real. Okay. So let me just kind of go through this. And while it is working on whether the notes were real, we'll go into that next. But let's continue down the line of the notes are fake, because we do need to look at all of this. Notes could be fake. Again, I'm just a hopeful kind of gal. Okay, so Reuters reported on July 1st that an FBI official said all 3 kidnapping-related messages that surfaced in media reports were determined to be fake. That's enormous, because previously we were building the motive analysis around Nancy taken, ransom demand, cryptocurrency, financial kidnapping. Correctamundo. Now the public evidence potentially reads Nancy targeted, forcibly removed, no authenticated ransom communication publicly known, fake ransom writers flood the case, which could be real. I mean, this could be true. So honestly, I think it is fair that we look at both scenarios. Okay. We have to keep our mind open. We can't just go in a direction that suits us. So we're going to be objective. I like a conspiracy though, and I like juice. So hopefully it gets juicy. So those are 2 very different crimes psychologically. If the genuine offender's primary goal was 4 million or 6 million in crypto with the Fingerhut payment option, I would expect some form of authenticated persistent payment process. And I think we can all agree with that. Not necessarily a Hollywood-style phone call, but something, a communication channel, proof of control, instructions, pressure, escalation, a deadline, blah, blah, blah. So where is the real kidnapper's demand? Okay, so that's now Chad's biggest question. So number 2, Sheriff Nanos has repeatedly used language that makes me think investigators see a selection motive. In March, Sheriff Chris Nanos said, "We believe we know why the kidnapper did this, and we believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that." Okay, the word salad. Oh man. It's like the latest interview that Nanos did where he's telling, I can't even go through it, but yeah, he talks in circles. And honestly, this is a circle. We believe we know why the kidnapper did this, and we believe it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that. So, okay, then don't tell us anything, in my opinion, Nanos. He also warned that investigators could not simply assure the public that others were safe, which is even more ridiculous, okay? Earlier reporting described Nanos as firmly believing the perpetrators knew who they were after, rather than this being a burglary gone wrong. So he's like, yeah, we know why they did this. So Chad says, I keep coming back to his wording. He did not publicly say, we believe this was financially motivated. We believe this was a kidnapping for ransom, although that's what they officially are treating it as. We believe she was targeted because of her daughter's wealth. We believe robbery was a motive. Instead, he said, we believe we know why he did this. Did he say why he did this? To me, that sounds like investigators have identified a motive category or behavioral explanation from the evidence. I need to know if he really did say, we believe we know why he did this. I guess porch guy is who he's referring to. To me, that sounds like investigators have identified a motive category or behavioral explanation from the evidence, perhaps digital evidence, perhaps the method of entry, which they will not tell us, perhaps Nancy's selection, perhaps something on surveillance, which we don't know if they have, perhaps information not released from the house, perhaps a pre-offense pattern. We simply don't know. But I think Nano's wording matters, and I actually would not put much emphasis on what Nanos says, except the very, very, very beginning when he just couldn't keep his yap shut and I think was giving us real clues. I think the things he said in the first 3 or 4 days before people yanked him back may actually be closer to the truth than anything we've heard since. And that's just my gut because he hadn't been corrected at that point. So number 3, Nancy is a strange target for a conventional professional ransom kidnapping. Nancy was 84, had difficulty walking, had a pacemaker, and needed daily medication for a heart condition, according to the FBI's own public description. Think like a purely financially motivated kidnapper. You need to enter the residence, control Nancy, physically move her, put her into transportation, keep her somewhere, provide medication, potentially deal with cardiac issues, prevent discovery, communicate a ransom demand, receive cryptocurrency, decide whether to release her. Nancy is an extraordinarily high-risk hostage. A financially sophisticated kidnapping crew would presumably recognize that. If your only goal is money, why select a medically vulnerable 84-year-old? The answer may be because her physical characteristics weren't the reason she was selected. Her emotional value was. That's why I keep returning to the idea of a proxy victim. So these are all things it looks like a professional kidnapper is going to have thought out. And what's more scary to me than just this statement is the fact that there's actually people out there that do take these things into consideration and actually put a plan in motion in order to kidnap, traumatize, hurt people. It's just sick. So number 4, I think Nancy may have been the weapon, not the ultimate target. This is the darkest but most compelling psychological theory to me. Imagine the offender's eternal goal isn't, I want Nancy. Instead, I want you to suffer because I have Nancy. And I agree with that. If we could just fast forward in a magic transporter machine to actually getting the suspect that's tied to the DNA, that's tied to this case, I cannot wait for that day because I think we all cannot wait to find out really why this whole thing has happened. What is some sicko literally sitting around thinking? Because Why did they want Savannah to suffer so badly? No matter who this is, there's no way that there isn't an aspect of this entire crime where Savannah was not an intended victim of having her precious mother taken. And who wanted her to suffer that badly, you know? And going back to family, is we don't really know what the dynamics are. Is there a undercurrent of just seething jealousy, an undercurrent of, everybody's perfect little girl, everybody's perfect little sweetheart, got everything handed to her, living a life of luxury with the perfect this and the perfect that, and I have nothing. And the brother has wealth, and the brother has this, and the brother has that, and I don't have anything. I'm scrimping, I'm scrapping, I'm scraping. That would make anybody, and somebody could completely appear normal. And if we have enough time, as I go through this, I've also asked ChatGPT to talk to me about who the suspect is. I wanted ChatGPT to profile the suspect. I can immediately see why taking Nancy would psychologically devastate Savannah. Nancy's her mother. It guarantees attention. It creates an audience, and critically, it forces Savannah to respond. Now, we all have to feel like these notes were definitely for attention, but we're going the line right now that the notes are fake, and that apparently people really just like to embed themselves in horrible crimes. All right, so let's continue on. The reaction component fascinates me. Courtney, you've been noticing this for months. Oh, thanks, Chad. Savannah speaks. Savannah returns to television. Savannah makes a plea. Savannah publicly expresses hope. And then some new communication or claim appears in the media. And that has absolutely been a pattern. On one of my more recent episodes, I literally had ChatGPT put together a matrix showing the last several times Savannah has done something, there has been a reaction. These people, whoever's writing these notes, at least the people writing the notes are watching TMZ, are watching Savannah. We now have to be extremely careful with that pattern because the FBI source reporting says the 3 media notes were fake, but here's the twist. The fact that those notes were fake does not eliminate an emotional offender theory. It actually leaves us with a much cleaner question. Did the genuine offender ever attempt to communicate at all? And you know what? This is actually the best point here of anything. We don't know at this point. Did the offender actually ever try to communicate anything? If she's kidnapped, did he do anything? Did he reach out to anyone? If the answer is no, this becomes much less like a conventional ransom kidnapping, which is true. Because why kidnap an old lady and then not communicate? Why kidnap Nancy and then not communicate? If you kidnap Nancy and you don't communicate and there is no ransom and the ransom notes are all fake, then it's strictly an elimination, in my opinion. It's an elimination. Is it a murder for hire? Why did Nancy have to be taken out? Because this line of thinking, if the ransom notes are all fake and the genuine offender did not communicate at all, then it's straight out murder. Guys, it's straight out murder. It's straight out homicide. It's not kidnapped for ransom. So this tells me that the story in Reuters about the notes being fake, it can't be real, folks, because we've been told that the crime has been treated as a kidnap for ransom. So if it's kidnap for ransom, someone has communicated something wanting money for the return of Nancy. That's what kidnap for ransom is. Kidnapping means I've taken her for ransom, means I will give her back once you pay me. If law enforcement is treating this as a kidnap for ransom, which is what they said, they've treated this as they're going with kidnap for ransom this whole time, then they must have been communicated somehow. And if it isn't, if these notes are fake, then they're hiding the real communication. And the interview with Hoda Copy, Savannah could have been covering up the real story. And this could be guilt knowledge that law enforcement is keeping to themselves. The real means of communication, they could be keeping from everybody. And again, I'm going way out on a limb here. Again, we probably need to stick with Occam's razor, and I think it's getting too complicated with that. So again, I have to think that at least some of these notes are real. And this is a great question. I have to think that perhaps the FBI has been in charge of this. But who knows? Supposedly, it's still being treated as a local case. So this adds definitely a twist. I just have to think that some of those, if all the notes are fake, then this is not a kidnap for ransom. In my opinion, it's flat out homicide. Okay, so number 6, my number one psychological motive is grievance, not necessarily romantic obsession. And I have agreed with that for a very long time. I don't think it's romantic. I don't think it's sexual. It could be just a fixation, not necessarily a stalker in the traditional sense. I mean, a grievance collector, someone who believes Savannah humiliated me. Savannah ignored me. The Guthries have everything. I was treated unfairly. I think they're better than people like me. I tried to contact her. Nobody listened. She needs to understand what suffering feels like. They owe me. I'm entitled. I'm her equal. But this tells me that she would have an idea of who it is. If somebody had reached out, did they reach out anonymously? Or is this really someone in her circle that she just hasn't identified yet? The grievance can be objectively ridiculous. The offender doesn't need a legitimate reason. In his mind, the grievance is legitimate. This is why I would be intensely interested in every communication directed at Savannah for the previous 5 years, not just obvious threats. I'd look for repeated emails, handwritten letters, social media messages, blah, 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 requests for money, requests for help, claims Savannah ignored someone. This is my personal strongest theory right now. And admiration, familiarity, entitlement, rejection, and anger. And if this was the case, then I would have to think that they would be on to somebody, because they could very easily dump all of her email into AI, and AI would be able to pull out patterns immediately. And this case would not be going into 5.5, 6 months. We're looking at 6 months. Number 7, I would not completely discard the crypto wrench attack theory, but I have downgraded it. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffendorfer has publicly argued the case appears consistent with a crypto link attack, and Newsweek reported on the emerging wrench attack theory. Certic, which we've read, has described her as a proxy target in a multi-million-dollar Bitcoin ransom scenario. But here's an important caveat. Certic classifying the case does not establish law enforcement confirmation, which is interesting because I almost read it as a certainty. The way that the article, the blog wrote this, it didn't say potential. It stated it like it was fact, and they haven't gone back and edited it, I don't believe. I think that would have made news if Certic had gone in and edited the blog. Certic is also a vendor that law enforcement could have used to help with cybersecurity, research and analyzation on this case. So how do we know that they don't know something that we don't? It could also be that they've dealt with things like this before, so they may have some insider knowledge that we don't have. I think that they would have pulled that article if it was giving away proprietary information. I would imagine law enforcement would have asked them to pull that blog, and they didn't. So if this was a wrench attack, where is the authentic wrench? The wrench attack is coercion. Give me the asset or I hurt the person. Okay, we simply cannot rule it out, but he's given wrench attack 25% probability. Revenge or retaliation is my third theory, and I think it's under-discussed. Here's the angle I think Crime Crunchies could really dig into. Thanks, Chad. What if Nancy's kidnapping was a message? Not a ransom operation, a message. The intended recipient could theoretically be Savannah, another Guthrie member, someone connected professionally to the family, someone in Nancy's personal orbit. So many people have talked about the Epstein stuff. Could this have been a warning to Savannah to stop doing interviews? And, I have not gone down the Epstein route personally. That's one I haven't gone down. Maybe it's worth going down. Because, just as many people in the last 5.5 months have said it could be due to, politically charged. It could be due to people who were linked to the Clinton, erasing data thing, to the interviewing the Epstein victims. And I have not gone down any of those roads. And yeah, I haven't put much clout into it, but it's just because I haven't really dove in. I haven't gone into that yet. I don't know. Maybe it's worth it, because a lot of people were saying family in the beginning, and I was ignoring that, just like I've kind of ignored the whole Epstein thing. But if this is a message, we don't know what these people are doing in their private lives. Are they, is her husband charged somehow? Is he doing something that somebody doesn't like? I feel like that's kind of going back out on the fringe, and I still feel like we need Occam's razor to pull us back in. So I kind of feel like, yeah, maybe it is a message, but I don't know. I feel like it's still just kind of going, I think it's too far out there, if that makes sense. And yeah, Millie Kay, to stop the interview or stop doing this or stop doing that. And the thing is that she's not doing those interviews. Pretty much right now, they have her on softball, feel-good jobs at work. I don't think she's doing any tough interviews at all. All right, number 9. I am currently less persuaded by a motive centered on Nancy's own finances, and I agree with that. So I've looked at for publicly substantiated reporting, which there isn't going to be a major inheritance dispute, even though we've heard that there could be a newly changed will or changed trust or executor. There's just no records. There's just no records. There's no way we could look into that. We just don't have that kind of insight. So my offender mind map. If you force me to build an offender theory tonight for Crime Crunchies, thanks, Chad, this is where I would land. Offender's primary emotion, resentment. Secondary emotion, entitlement. Psychological need, recognition and control. Victim selection. Nancy selected because of her emotional value to another person. Planning, targeted and at least moderately premeditated. Oh, no, heavily premeditated. Money, possibly secondary. I don't agree with that anymore. Savannah, possible psychological nexus. or intended audience, Nancy proxy victim, which I'm not sure. I think my gut is telling me right now that she was the intended victim, that Nancy needed to be eliminated no matter what. So yes, here's my gut analysis. I think investigators may believe they are dealing with a grievance-driven offender who specifically selected Nancy because of her connection to someone else. Nancy's abduction guaranteed Savannah's attention. All right, I'm going to go to the bottom here because I asked ChatGPT to give those same predictions if the ransom notes were real. So if you're just joining me, ChatGPT gave us scenarios of what percentage he believes the motive would be, but ChatGPT took it upon himself to say that the latest FBI statement was that the ransom notes were fake. But now I said, hey, Chad, what if the ransom notes were real? Oh, Chatty Chad, would your percentages change on what the motive was for kidnapping Nancy Guthrie? Because again, back to what we just talked through, if this is kidnapping for ransom, that implies there was a communication. So not all of the notes could have been fake, folks. If all of the notes are fake, this is flat out homicide. Flat out homicide. So Chad says, yes, it changes it quite a bit. The authenticity of the ransom communications is one of the biggest variables in the case. If investigators ultimately confirmed that the ransom notes were genuine and written by the actual kidnappers, I would substantially increase the probability of a financial motive. Aha! That's probably true, Chad. Conversely, if they remain assessed as hoaxes, I place much more weight on a grievance, but I don't think they're hoaxes. At least one of those notes is real. Otherwise, it's not kidnap for ransom. It's homicide. So we have to be careful we have to use critical thinking. And critical thinking tells me that not all the notes were fake. They cannot all have been fake. So here's how my estimates would change if the ransom notes were confirmed authentic. Estimated probability, motive, financial coercion, or cryptocurrency ransom, possibly a wrench attack or other targeted extortion. 20% financial motive mixed with personal grievance or fixation. 15% revenge or retaliation with the ransom serving as cover or an additional objective. 7% pure emotional or obsession-driven motive with a staged financial demand. 3% other or unknown. So right now, if the ransom notes are real, Chad is saying that it looks more like a wrench attack, possibly, or other targeted extortion, which could still be a family or close member of the family with a financial need. So financial coercion or cryptocurrency ransom could still be, it could be a stranger for the wrench attack, or it still could be someone in her closest orbit, eliminating her in order to get financial gain. And that seems like more like what we're dealing with. So this one already looks more accurate, just because, again, I think we're all thinking that at least one of the notes is real. So why my assessment would shift? A genuine ransom note demonstrates several important things. The offender intended to communicate. The offender expected something in return. The offender had at least an initial plan beyond simply abducting Nancy. The financial demand becomes evidence of motive instead of something that could be dismissed as misdirection. Financial demand becomes evidence of motive instead of something that could be dismissed as misdirection. However, even if the notes were genuine, I still would not automatically conclude that money was the only motive. And I kind of agree with that, because honestly, if they wanted money, they could have kidnapped Savannah. They could have kidnapped Savannah's husband. They could have kidnapped Cameron. But why Nancy? Well, if honestly, if Nancy is the one who's kidnapped, it's because I think that they're meeting several objectives with one movement. They're getting rid of a lot of problems. Nancy can't fight back. Nancy needs to be eliminated. We don't have to take care of Nancy. Everything gets liquidated. Everyone gets their inheritance. It covers up the ransom. She's easier to take. Really wasn't going to be that hard to kill her because she was already in, somewhat poor health. I'm not saying that she was on her deathbed at all, but Lori Smith, you're a naughty girl. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that. Thank you so much. You're so awesome. Thank you so much for your super sticker. You're very, very sweet. I really appreciate that so much. I will keep that up for a minute. I know, naughty. Lori, I love all of my members, but everyone's like, keep your money, go get some gas, go get some groceries. But thank you. I genuinely appreciate your generosity. You're so sweet. Thank you so much. I have a cat hair on my face or something. Thank you so much. Okay, so I would still ask, why Nancy? That's a question that keeps pulling me back. If the sole objective was maximizing the chance of collecting millions of dollars, there are factors that make Nancy a challenging hostage from a purely criminal business perspective. Public reporting describes her as, we've already been through this. All right, we're going to skip. What would make me believe it was primarily financial? I'd look for publicly verified evidence such as a communication channel maintained over time, proof that only the real kidnapper could provide. None of these things we could ever find. So what would make me suspect an emotional motive? The unusually personal language, which we heard she's buried in nature. We have heard unusually personal language, references that go beyond money, signs of resentment, a desire to frighten or psychologically wound the family, inconsistent financial behavior that suggests the money demand wasn't the offender's real priority. And yes, we still have Derek Kalela's weird text that does not indicate ransom, reward, anything. It doesn't even reference Nancy. It's just, where's the Bitcoin? We're waiting on the transaction. One caution, there's another possibility that often gets overlooked. Motives can change during a crime. Interesting. For example, an offender begins with a financial objective. Something goes wrong. Fear of identification grows. Panic or anger changes the offender's decisions. The financial objective becomes secondary. Well, and I do believe this actually might be a really good angle. I might even want to come back to this on another show because this is something I haven't gone through. I want to save this because I have not gone through the mind of the kidnapper, how the plan went to hell in a handbasket, and wasn't that Dr. B one who said something about change of absolutely. You know what? I mean, I might have heard it. I don't remember it. But this is, I'm always looking for weird angles that people, like I went through the walking through what if the plan had gone off the way it was meant to, and walking through what that could have looked like. Of course, all speculation and just guessing games, but the intention was A, but then the outcome they may not have even realized, they might have thought it was going to be easier to just eliminate her, or even if they meant to keep her alive. And I mean, we have discussed the idea that there's a big difference in getting convicted of kidnapping than homicide. Big difference. Okay, on the reverse, an offender begins with a personal grievance, later decides a ransom demand could delay investigators or create confusion, which creating confusion, I think, is very advantageous. I think creating confusion, I just don't think that these people are that smart. And, you know, we used to think that the mastermind had the intelligence and that porch guy was the mope. But if it's the people in the A tier, you know, the main orbit, like, you know, we've been talking about, I'm not sure that they're really the smartest bulb in the batch either. All right, my current bottom line. With the information that's publicly available today, I think the authenticity of the ransom communications is one of the most important unanswered questions in the entire case. If they were conclusively shown to be genuine and connected to the abductor, I would move financial motive into first place. If they are not, I think a grievance-driven, targeted abduction becomes a stronger explanation. So something just hit my brain. So let's think about all the FBI leaks and whether any of the FBI leaks could possibly be true. So Howard Blum, who did the article that gave additional information that was in at least one of this, like the second ransom note, I have to feel like that was a real FBI leak. And here's why I think that the additional information where we learned, you know, she's now buried in nature or buried with nature. Okay. I can't remember exactly which. Okay. I think that that was a real FBI leak for two reasons. The people who have seen the note never came forward and said that that is not true. That was not in the note. And there are enough people in the media who would have come back and corrected that. So I do believe that the note is real, okay, that there's something to it. And the second reason why I believe that FBI leaked that information to Howard Blum, again, is to tickle the wire. There had been nothing going on with the case, and the FBI could have needed somebody to hear those words in the media being released, because there is nothing worse than thinking that things have died down and that you're safe, and then all of a sudden having "they're buried in nature" come out and somebody pooping blue Smurf poops, okay, and immediately contacting somebody, because that's what the FBI is going to want to see. If we drop this, then what does Perp A do? Who does Perp A contact? Who does Perp B, who is the contactee? Who is the chain of people being contacted because we're releasing this? So we're tickling the wire. So if the FBI is leaking to Reuters that the notes are fake, then the FBI leaking to Howard Blum additional context and words of the note would have to be made up as well. And nobody came forward and said that that was made up. So I don't know if that even just made sense, but what I'm trying to say is, what if the FBI is just trying to confuse everybody with this information? You know, they could be trying to accomplish a few things with what they're leaking to media. Tickling the wire is they're watching somebody and they're going to see exactly what they do. after this has been released? But then also, what are they trying to do by coming out and saying that the notes are fake? What is that? And we know that the wording in the note was, no one came back and said that's not true. So who are these people leaking and why are they leaking it? Okay. All right, one final note. Even if a ransom note is genuine, it does not tell us who wrote it or whether the person who wrote it is physically it physically carried out the abduction. And no, I think the person who wrote it did not physically carry out the abduction. A lot of people are thinking that if woman wrote the notes because there's an apology in it, there's nothing you could do would have changed this. The whole ransom note doesn't make any sense because how did they expect an 84-year-old woman that has health problems to not perish under those circumstances, and then use the phrase, nothing you could have done would have prevented this. So what does that mean? Nothing you could have done would have prevented this. So if you would give me the money earlier, was not going to save her. Is that what they mean? We don't know. And then it took 2.5 days or something like that for the note to even get to Savannah. So again, why we're all here is because this case is nuts. Okay. So if the notes are real, basically ChatGPT agrees with the more financial, which is kind of where we all are. All right. So let me go up here and ask. I did ask. I have to go back. So just talk amongst yourselves. I asked ChatGPT to profile the perp. Can you profile it? Because we've had Dr. Ann Burgess, Dr. Gary Brucato, John Fitzgerald, Jim Clemente, Profiling the Profiler, an entire episode on that. So if you haven't watched it, again, I asked ChatGPT to take 4 main profilers and put together, what the profilers predicted the main perp is and what he profiled as in the beginning. And then I asked ChatGPT to give us what their prediction of the profile would be now with all the information that we've gotten. And Gary Brucato, Dr. Gary Brucato, was the most consistent of all 4 profilers. But now I wanted to see if ChatGPT could profile. So Chad says, yes. And Courtney, if the motive theory we just discussed is even roughly right, I think we can make a cautious behavioral prediction about what the offender's personal life might be like. Huge disclaimer, this is not an identification of a real person. Yeah. You're never going to give me good tea, Chad. It makes me so mad. That said, current public facts still include no publicly identified suspect or arrest. Yeah. All right. So again, he's saying the offender may look surprisingly normal from the outside. And this is what Dr. Gary says. I do not picture an obviously wild, disorganized street criminal. I picture someone who can pass. A neighbor might say, he's a little strange, but I never thought he is capable of this. A coworker might say, quiet, kept to himself. A relative might say, he could get angry, but mostly he just disappeared into his computer. And someone very close to him may eventually say, there were things that didn't make sense after February 1st. Ooh, like maybe pulling out of the driveway in a car, covering your face with a hoodie. That was mean. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Oops. But anyway, all speculation. So my rough personal life profile would be saying probably male, 30s to mid 50s. Single, divorced, separated, or emotionally disconnected from partner. That's interesting. Employment, capable of working, possibly inconsistent employment or underemployed. So someone who is kind of unmotivated. That's interesting. This is an unmotivated individual who could do more, but isn't. Interesting. I'm going to ask him to profile. Let me do that now so we can work on it. hey, can you profile the suspect taking into consideration that the ransom notes are real? That might change your profile. All right, let's get him working on that. I love ChatGPT. I don't care. I'm not ashamed of it. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Do 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 do. All right, so single, divorced, separated, or emotionally disconnected from partner. We've talked about dynamics. Even if this person is married, we've talked about coercive control, manipulation, seeking out a submissive partner, someone they can control, someone who has low self-esteem. A narcissist is going to seek out somebody who they can control and get them to do things, agree to things, gaslight them, allow them not to disagree or have their own opinion. So I would almost say that if this person has a partner, that they could be emotionally disconnected, or again, they could be that controlling personality. So again, underemployed. So this is not a motivated person. This is someone who isn't reaching their max potential. Intelligence, average to above average, but may believe he's much smarter than others. And that is I believe this is going to give us the chef profile. And I believe that he definitely thinks he's smarter than others. That is absolutely a narcissistic tendency. And if this person is behind these notes, then, the attention seeking is one thing. But if we've talked about the beauty of the execution of this plot, if it was intended to hurt Savannah, and the beauty of the ruthlessness of this plot includes sending a ransom note for your mother days later after we know that the mother has already died to TMZ, to where we can't keep this private, Savannah. Savannah, you know what? Your life, you struggle to keep your real life out of the public eye. Savannah, everyone's going to see this. It's very public. You cannot cover this up, Savannah. This one's going to really hurt Savannah, because everyone on the entire planet Earth is going to know your mother is gone and that we want ransom. Oh, and by the way, Savannah, the entire world now knows you never paid the ransom. You never paid the ransom, Savannah. Regardless of if somebody asked you to pay it or asked you not to pay it or advised you not to pay it, you never paid the ransom, Savannah. How embarrassing is all of this, to being a public person and having your most personal tragedy and life being played out on a global scale. And them sending one of the notes to the competing Tucson station that Savannah didn't work at, I think is also another jab, because we don't know the dynamic of how competitive those stations are to each other. So sending the note of her mother being kidnapped to the Tucson station that Savannah did not work at, I think is another jab. I mean, if you think about how all the ways, it's like a diamond with all the different facets and ways that this person has gone after Savannah, all the different ways. I mean, we would have to list them all out. Online life, potentially much larger than real world life. Social life is a small circle, and that does not fit this, what we've been talking about lately, at least. Criminal history may have minor or unusual contacts with police. But here's the question. What if this is like a Kalala, the middleman? Because, I'm assuming this was about the chef. I mean, you asked if this was the chef. Who is this? You asked, is this the chef or porch guy? See, what if we have like the top tier of the pyramid, the people that are going to benefit from this the most? Then we've got porch guy who's at the bottom, who's actually doing the deed. And what if we've got someone like Halala who's in the middle? I mean, think about it. We could have 3 profiles. We could have 3 profiles. We could have the beneficiary. The mastermind could be the manager. And then we've got the waiter. So like the owner of the business, the manager, and the waiter. We could have 3 profiles that we've not looked at. There could be 3 profiles here. That's crazy. So if we're looking at not the owner of the restaurant, but the manager, this fits Kalala. Probably male, 30s to mid 50s, single, divorced, separated, or emotionally disconnected, capable of working, possibly inconsistent employment or underemployed. And he did work for the county. And I think he had like a clerk job and embezzled $10,000. His intelligence average to above average, but may believe he's much smarter than others. Small circle, underemployed, may have minor or unusual contacts with police, but not necessarily a major violent felony record. He's the manager. If it's who we are, if it's DC, this guy's not violent. His personality could be grievance oriented, entitled, resentful, definitely hangs out with mommy. Mommy was there for him. He's a grown-ass man, and mommy took him to court each and every time. Mommy must have bailed him out. He probably was living with mommy with the ankle bracelet. Mommy is definitely enabling his bad behavior. Broods rather than immediately explodes. What if he has temper tantrums, with mommy? Family relationships, possible estrangement or long-running conflicts. I mean, that could be dad. He's definitely close to mommy. View of women, complicated, possibly idealization, followed by anger or blame. Finances, possible instability. Hobbies, solo, online, technical, collecting, gaming, musical. I think that definitely. Grievance archivist. That's my phrase for him. He keeps receipts in his head. Someone insulted him in 2018. He remembers the exact words. But let me go to the bottom here. I want to see what ChatGPT, how he profiles this person if the notes are real. Because I do think it's important to look at both. So I said, hey, Chad, you guys watch me type it out. You're like, wow, Courtney types really good. Did you see how good I typed, everyone? ChatGPT's like, wow, you're the best typist, Courtney. Ooh. So I said, hey, can you profile the suspect taking into consideration the ransom notes are real? So Chat says, yes, I think it would change the profile, but only in specific ways. It would shift my emphasis from a primarily grievance-driven offender to someone who likely combines planning, financial thinking, and interpersonal control. That said, this is still a hypothetical behavior profile. Of course it is. Because you're boring, Chad. You're boring. God, he just won't go. He doesn't say that there's aliens. He doesn't say there's lizard people. He doesn't say they're shapeshifters or that they have a pizza, Comet pizza. There's no, whatever, Chad. All right, so planning. I would expect someone who planned well in advance rather than acting impulsively. Yes, they did. Perform some level of surveillance. Yes, we know that happened. Thought through transportation, timing, and escape routes. That's for sure. Had a backup plan if the original plan failed. Maybe if he really needed that money. Because again, we don't know how much the Bitcoin was. Did he really have a backup plan? I would think the owner of the restaurant would have a backup plan, not the manager. This doesn't necessarily mean a criminal mastermind. It means someone who believed preparation would give them an advantage. And I definitely think these people thought through the tech stuff. Somebody probably did research on how to get this done. And I do believe, Mr. Joe, that somebody definitely got a car that doesn't have a brain. Not the person doesn't have a brain, the car doesn't have a brain. I think they probably got off a lot a car that doesn't have GPS and the computer stuff. Okay, so believes they are smarter than investigators, enjoys manipulating people psychologically, is comfortable lying convincingly, is emotionally detached during high-stress situations, thinks several moves ahead. I mean, this could be DC. Rather than explosive anger, I would expect controlled confidence. In my opinion, the chef got DC to find someone to pull it off. So yes, chef hired all of them. That's why DC said they're waiting. You're right. I mean, ultimately, well, and I think that the chef would have used DC because I think that they would have thought that they were safer using DC, that nobody was going to figure out the connection. But the internet does not lie. The internet never forgets. Whoa. Ironically, Financial Outlook. Ironically, I wouldn't necessarily expect a wealthy offender, neither would I. I would look for someone who feels financially trapped or frustrated, believes they deserve much more money than they have, may have experienced business failure, investment losses, or maybe embezzlement, is attracted to the idea of a single event solving their financial problems. And this could also be the chef owner. And this could actually fit the beneficiary of all this, because if they feel financially trapped or frustrated, they're going to do something desperate. Believes they deserve much more money than they have. And you know what? Who deserves more money than the person who's actually taking care of the mother of all the wealthy people in the family? I would be pissed. I'm telling you right now, if I was taking care of my mom and living paycheck to paycheck, even if somebody had been kind enough to pay for my house, again, that novelty wears off. If I'm taking care of my mom and everyone else has millions, why the hell am I struggling? I should have much more money. I'm the one doing all the hard work. May have experienced business failure, investment losses, debt, or chronic financial dissatisfaction. And there could be debt. I don't know. Someone came up with a gambling problem. I've not seen anything like that, but I mean, it's going around. It doesn't mean it's true. Is attracted to the idea of a single event solving their financial problems. And wouldn't this be the single event? They're killing 5 birds with 1 stone. Technology. If cryptocurrency truly played a central role, I would expect at least moderate digital literacy. And these younger people, they figure it out. Not necessarily an elite hacker, but someone who understands digital wallets at a practical level, knows basic operational security concepts, has researched cryptocurrency extensively, reads online forums or technical discussions, knows how to find information without drawing attention. And I have to wonder, when they arrested DC, did they take his computer? Did we hear anything at all about what they got on him in a search warrant? Let me ask. Did they search his computer or devices? I'm assuming they did. I'm going to, of course, assume that they did. So what did they get off his computer? Because I'm telling you right now, if they did, this is, I mean, if he researched all this stuff, him or T, I mean, this is easy stuff. Employment, I would be less likely to picture someone living completely outside society. Instead, possibilities might include someone with experience in technical trades, logistics, transportation, construction, IT support, security, self-employment, blah, blah, blah. All right. So we kind of get the idea. It's hard to say. So the revised hypothetical profile is age 30 to 55, probably male, but there's a group. I think we're all pretty sure there's a group here. Planning above average, impulse control, relatively good, technology, pretty familiar. View of the crime likely rationalizes it as a means to an end rather than seeing themselves as simply evil. Now, does anybody here think that DC has any remorse over committing this type of crime? I have a hard time thinking that he would feel bad. I think all he thinks about is getting the money, but I might be wrong. Does anyone else feel like DC would have any type of remorse about doing what he did if he was the middleman? I don't think so. I feel like he's hands off. Does Porch Guy feel bad? I don't even think Porch Guy feels bad, only because he got caught. Bingo. I don't think Porch Guy feels bad. Now, do I think that if this is A&T, I think they feel bad. They probably, do they regret it? I don't know. Do you think they regret it? Yes, probably. You know why? They never got the ransom. They never got the $4 or $6 million. They never got that money. They never got, if they did this for money, they never got the money. And now they have eliminated somebody for nothing. And if they're caught, they're not even going to get their inheritance. That's the ironic thing behind this whole thing is if it is a close family member and they are caught, they will not even get the inheritance. They're not going to get anything other than 3 hots and a cot, maybe. All right. And I'm sure the answer is that they have, let's see. So did they search his devices? There's no indication that the FBI conducted a full forensic search of his computers, but there's no way that they didn't. What investigators publicly said they did, according to the federal complaint, investigators traced the VoIP account. They obtained records showing we've already seen that. The public record does not say that they did search the computer. There's no reference, but they're not going to. Could they have searched his devices anyway? Yes. So, I mean, that was probably a really stupid question. And I am sorry for wasting everybody's time with that stupid question. Let's see if I had any other questions that I asked. Okay. So one thing that I'm going to do, and I'll see what happens, is I asked ChatGPT if he can unmask Porch Guy. So Millie, and people might disagree. I think Savannah called Kelly so quickly, Senator Kelly, because A, she knows him. B, I believe that first day, and I think that we have enough information to feel like law enforcement was not taking the case seriously like a criminal situation. I think that from what we've heard, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, that the first day law enforcement were treating it as a walk-off, and there was probably enough of an indication between Annie, Cam, and Savannah that this was not a walk-off. And so it's possible Savannah called Senator Kelly to get him to understand that he needed, if he could, to help get law enforcement to treat this more seriously. Yeah, and somebody did mention, I think it was you, Frostflower, that commented, and the replay crew, that we need to look at the nostrils. I spend so much time looking at the eyeballs and the eyebrows. So I'm going to still, so what ChatGPT said, can you put some pictures, the best pictures you can find of Porch Guy, and maybe he'll do something with it. So I don't know. I'm going to do that. And so our next show, we'll probably take a look at that. And maybe I'll go down, maybe I'll walk through what the offender might have been thinking after the plan goes sideways, and just kind of walk through those emotions. Because, you know, and this is what I wanted to ask you guys. I mean, is there anything you want me to cover? Because I predict that this case is going to go quiet for a while. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of information coming out on Nancy for a while. And I don't want to come on just to talk about the stuff we've already covered. I want new content, and I want to talk about things that are important and interesting and different angles, so we can actually, use critical thinking and, so think about if there's anything else you guys would like to hear about, or even other stories, because I honestly feel like we're going to go dry like a desert for a while. Excuse me. This is what happened. If we go dry like a desert, it could be some time. Yeah, I think September is the sentencing for Derek, and that's going to be just his probation. It's not going to be much at all. So and I want if you guys are spending your time with Crime Crunchies, I want to make sure that we're all using our brain muscles. I don't want to just sit here and chit chat. I really want to know. Oh yeah, I have, and Max is super busy. I'm going to email him again. He said he was really busy this week, so I'll suggest I'll email him again tomorrow, because I don't really want to bother him. I really appreciate him even being willing to come on, and so that will be really interesting. I might do a dial-in show later this week. I was thinking I have to dog sit this weekend. And if things get quiet, I certainly don't mind doing a dial-in show. We haven't done one of those yet. And, just so we can kind of talk, give you guys a voice. And that, that's an interesting concept about who's covering this stuff up. We all have wondered a few times, is there a cover up going on? Because it sure feels like Nanos isn't doing, it's almost like he's on purpose trying not to solve this thing. So, okay, well, you guys are kind of interested in a dial-in. So what I would do is I would share the link for the StreamYard. You just click it, you come in, you don't have to be on camera. you can just use your audio, or if you want to use your camera, you can. So we will, I'll do a cover-up show. I'll look into cover-up. I also I'll probably do a show on walking through the offender as the objective changes based on bundling. And maybe there's something in August. I'm not sure, but I really appreciate your guys' feedback. And let me get this off the thing. And so thank you so much, because I do still want us to hang out and, still continue sleuthing. I always want us to be challenging ourselves. Maybe I could do an Epstein show. I haven't gone down Epstein. Write that down. I could go down Epstein. Hi, little one. All right. Well, I think we can put a fork in it tonight. I think we've done, oh, your baby wolf. I think we've done, thank you, everybody. I think we've done as much as we can do tonight. We have looked at what ChatGPT, lots of rabbit holes. There's so many rabbit holes. Yes, Joe. And so basically, wrapping up tonight, we learned that ChatGPT, it really depends on if those ransom notes are fake or real. And I have to think they're real. Because if they're not real, it's not a kidnap for ransom. Sorry. If there's no ransom notes, it's just straight homicide. Just homicide. So the notes are real. All right, you guys, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I will put some more things together. I might not be in my Crime Crunchy lair the next time you join me, but that's okay. Still hang out for a little bit. So until then, please subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, be a cool kid. And until then, I will catch